Good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Our first item today is we have to approve the minutes from our November 1st meeting. As you know, we didn't have a meeting in December. And I ask for a motion to approve the minutes from November 1st, 2019.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The minutes have been approved. I'd like to remind everyone that our next board meeting is going to be February 6th at the central office here in Des Moines. Hope to see you all there. To start off, we have welcoming comments from Joy and Jerry.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Joy Esposito. I'm the Assistant Director here at the Evelyn K. Davis Center. Been here almost 5 years, came into the Assistant Director position about a year ago. So I want to welcome you all to our new space. We moved in October from across the street. If you remember, we were over next to Sea Fresh Market. We kind of missed being able to walk outside and go right and get some egg rolls, but now we have Class University. Doubled our capacity here, so we're at about 24,000 square feet. We have 2 floors, this floor and then downstairs. Obviously, we're so proud of this space, and I like to invite people to hold meetings here. If you have any opportunities where you need a meeting, please let me know. I like to see this as a shared space with the community. We have the capacity, and if we have room availability, we are more than happy to accommodate you. All of our rooms have these spaces and these smart TVs and lots of good technology. You'll need to know how to use it because I don't always know. I can turn it on and that's about it. We are in our 9th year. Last year, fiscal year, we served about 8,500 people came through our doors. We are doing re-entry work pretty much every day. We see folks coming straight from various facilities. We see folks coming from Fresh Start, from the Fort. We are in multiple partnerships with various organizations doing direct service with our returning citizens. So we're really proud of being able to offer a wide range of services to those folks, and we look forward to continuing to doing that in 2020 and hopefully expanding some of that work we're doing as DMAC starts to explore some other inside initiatives with education on the inside. Keeping fingers crossed for the Second Chance Pell Grant, which will expand a lot of what we're able to do in connection with that. So again, welcome. I'm happy you all are here. And if you have any questions, I'll do some housekeeping. Restrooms are just out this door to the right and then directly to the left. And there's an elevator. If anybody needs to go downstairs, that's where the water fountain is. So I'm sorry, but it looks like you all have water. So I've left my card here. I've left a little 1-page sheet of the services we offer, so you're welcome to take that. Please contact me, like I said, if you'd like to hold a meeting or if you'd like to just kind of offer some services to some folks that you might know. So thank you for being here.
Thank you, Joy. I believe this is our first time we've been here.
Yes, it is.
Please come back.
Looking forward to learning as much about the facility here as we can.
Yeah, I'd like to say that there's a strong re-entry program here, and many of the men and women that are returning from, our system, they stop here for the integrated services that are here, not only the supports for housing and connections to health services and counseling, but also workforce services and training, as well as resume building and that partnership with Iowa Workforce Development. There is a counselor that is officed here. So it really has that one-stop operation here, where someone comes in here with a need, then this center is the place where if the service isn't offered here, then the individual or the client is connected to a community partner to provide the service.
Thank you.
So.
One last one. Oh. Hello. Great. One last thing I did want to offer is that several years ago, we came into an opportunity and some interest for suiting men that are going back into the workforce and needing interview clothing. So it started as a very small little, people can bring in some suits and we can get folks suited. We now have a Men on the Move clothing closet downstairs. We are in close partnership with Mr. B's. He has kind of adopted us and will give us excess inventory. Men's Warehouse, Skeffington's. And so basically what we know is that when folks want to get to an interview, sometimes they're not outfitted appropriately. So they can get a referral here, come out with a brand new suit in most cases, and look the part. And so we wanted to offer that for men. We know that we're also in close partnership with Dress for Success for women. And so this was to be able to offer the same opportunity for men. So we're really excited about that. We know that some of them, the suits come in. I think we've seen some price tags where there's like a $500 brand new price tag on it. So it's not, it's not anything that, might be from the 70s. Not that that's bad, coming from Goodwill, but we do have a lot of really nice attire for men and make sure that they are looking the part for those job interviews. So feel free to refer them our way as well. Mr. Dr. Desir.
Well, good morning. I've been out of it for a couple of weeks. I had to kind of remember where my dress clothes were this morning, so I apologize. I just got my wife back for the first time in 3 years, so I was like, let me enjoy this time. But thank you all for coming here today. Again, my name is Dr. Marvin DeGier. I'm the director here for the center. I know Joy kind of gave you all an overview already, pretty much of everything that we do. But we are seriously committed to working in this reentry space. I know some of you know what we do on a day-to-day basis, but everything from your community corrections to reentry, from Fresh Start to Fort Des Moines to even going into the prisons now, we're pretty much there on the ground, helping in every level. From every grant that's available that somebody's working on in Central Iowa, we support that. We're really excited about some of the things we'll be trying to do ourselves internally coming up here in 2020. So we're just happy that you're here, and hopefully if you ever, whatever you need us for, we're there. So appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jerry?
Step it up. Good morning, my name is Jerry Evans. I'm the director of the 5th Judicial District. And before I get started, I do want to give a testimonial for Marvin and Joy. When I came on board about 3 years ago, I have 30 years of experience working with different community partners, and a lot of them come and go, and trying to develop confidence in the work that they're all doing. And Evelyn K. Davis has been awesome. I mean, they're so professional. They walk the talk. They, Dwight, Charles Anders, they get out to the prisons. They work with our guys. I mean, they just do a phenomenal job. And being able to be close enough to our operation for our staff to come over and work with them has just been awesome. And one of our other partners that we work with a lot is Goodwill Industries, who also works closely with Evelyn K. Davis and St. Vincent de Paul. I mean, there's just a lot of resources here in Polk County that's, helping people re-enter back into society, and it's been awesome. It's been a great partnership. So this morning, I just wanted to talk a little bit about our operation and kind of how we're using data now to analyze how we're doing and where we need to target resources. So I was just going to do a quick PowerPoint. And before I begin, I want to introduce my assistant director, Art Raybon, is here today. And then Scott Adams is our programmer, and all of the stuff that we do technology-wise with our collecting of data, Scott's responsible for, and he does a great job for our department. So with that, I'll just kind of step into it. So this kind of gives you an oversight of our district. Really what I want to show with this slide is the fact that not all resources are targeted equally. We target our resources based on risk. And really, when I talk about resources, I'm also talking about dosage. So as you can see, the highest risk clients that we have based on our risk assessments are level 5 cases. And if you'll see, one of the trends that we're recognizing with our data is that our level 5 cases are going up. So right now we're at 518, and that's a 26% increase from just October. And conversely, our level ones are going down. Our level ones will be our lowest risk cases. And it's really, that graph doesn't really, the trend line really doesn't show, but it's really basically static. So we try to, as best we can, to use the resources that we have to target our highest risk cases. For our highest risk cases, when I talk about resources, they're gonna be in a cognitive group. They're gonna be seen 4 times a month by their probation officer. They're gonna have a home visit, and they're also gonna have collateral contact. So the probation officer is gonna check on with their employer, they're gonna check with their family, they're gonna check with their group facilitators to make sure they're making progress in group. So there's a lot that goes into supervising the level 5. And a level 5 case for a standardized workload would be somewhere around 25 cases in a perfect world. If you can get 25 only in a perfect world. Our level 1s, they're the vast majority of our cases, as you can see by this chart. They're somewhere around 39 to 40% of all of our cases, and we see them once every 6 months. And really what we're doing is just making sure that they're continuing to make progress towards if they have a substance abuse assessment, or if they're required to pay fines or restitution, that they're making progress on paying those. And an average caseload size for somebody who's a level 1 is somewhere around 400 to 450. And the weird part about that is it's the same workload credit. It's just because you only have to see somebody once every 6 months, you're really having a lot of the same contact, but you're not being so compacted with it. And the other thing I forgot to mention with the level 5 cases, the average office visit or contact with the level 5 case is going to be 30 to 45 minutes. We want our officers sitting down, going over those program goals that they've established between the client and themselves, making sure that they're working on the case plan, trying to work through barriers with them. And the level 1 cases, it's more of a monitoring visit, and they're seeing, so those probation officers are seeing them basically for about 15 minutes. So the next thing I want to show you is the fact that the vast majority of our cases are going to be probation. So if you just look at the comparison between probation and parole for our district, it's 82% of our cases are probation, 17% are parole. So I just, really what that should tell the general public is the vast majority of people are not sentenced to prison. The vast majority of people are sentenced to some form of community supervision. So those numbers are pretty static. We look at those, year over year, and it seems to be the same in terms of our overall numbers of people on probation versus parole. The only thing I wanted to talk about with our level 5s is that we can also drill down and look at what it looks like by race and gender. So if I can get this to click down, here we go. So these are the level 5 cases, and if we drill it down by race, what you're going to see is that proportionately African Americans comprise a larger percentage of our level 5 cases than, I don't know if I have to do it by male to, so they're usually about 10% of our highest risk cases, and our overall risk is around 6% for level 5 cases. So what that's telling us is that we need to look a little bit closer at our risk instruments to see whether or not our risk instruments are having a disproportionate effect and putting too many African Americans in higher risk categories. And we've already started that process working with Sarah Finnerman at Central Office to see if some of the factors we're using within the IRR are causing more African Americans to fall into the high risk category. And we've looked at least one model where we've been able to eliminate the disparity, but we don't know if that model can be validated yet. So that's the work we're currently doing. There's a group of us across the state that are working with Sarah to try to change some of the factors and reweight the factors with our risk instruments to make sure that it's basically neutral across the board for all races. And then the other thing, lastly with this, there's very few level 5 women, females in our system. The vast majority of female clients are associated directly or indirectly, I kind of guess, they're victims of crime, and then they're also more apt to have lower level crimes, a lot of property crimes, writing of bad checks, substance abuse issues. And even though we talked about, or I talked about in the beginning, targeting resources towards risk, it's a little bit different with the female population. If you talk to the probation officers who supervise a predominantly female population, they'll let you know there's no 15-minute meeting with that client. There's just so much going on in their life that they need more time to really case plan with them. So we've recognized that. Our Fresh Start Women's Center, with their trauma-informed care curriculum, their gender responsivity program. So we try to keep the numbers down, recognizing that there is not a 15-minute contact a lot of times with our female clients. So the nice thing about this, the analytics we've been able to produce through Tableau in our district is that all of this gets updated every 15, well, I guess it's every 3 hours. So whenever ad hoc, this is all tied into ad hoc, so anytime there's updates in our ad hoc data, we can hit refresh and this will give us a current view. And what we're hoping to do is expand on all of this. So the other thing, lastly, I know I keep saying lastly, but I want to point out that as a director, what this allows me to do is also look at, this is the chart I meant to hit, where it shows the, all of them, is figure out where we need resources and where we don't. So for example, what we found out is if I can drill down by work unit, I can see that in Knoxville, for example, actually I need to go, I think I go here and then it shows me, is that the wrong one? Did it take out Knoxville, Scott?
Yeah, click the all.
Yep.
place.
Yep.
I'll do it again.
Oh, okay. And then show Knoxville here. Our numbers in Knoxville are going down, and so in using the data, we're able to see that we probably can realign resources. So, and I think, I hate to say it, but I think this is going to be a trend statewide with people leaving the rural areas and moving more towards the urban areas. So we have 4 staff in Knoxville, and we're recognizing that we're overstaffed in Knoxville, and it's not just cases, but it's also the risk levels in Knoxville. I forgot to maybe click off of that to kind of give a better view. So we've moved 1 officer from our Knoxville office and to come up and help out in Des Moines where our needs at. But again, we're still looking at risk. So as a comparison, if we just look at Adel, for example, which is Dallas County, they're going up in numbers, but their risk levels are low. So even though, 20 years ago we might have said, oh, we're getting hammered in Adel, we're getting hammered in Dallas County with cases, before we started using risk to kind of assess where we're at, we would have, maybe started trying to figure out how we need to put more officers in Adel. And again, we lease space in Adel, so we would have had to increase our, our footprint there. But when we look down and we can drill down into the data, a lot of the cases that are coming out to Adel are lower risk cases. And again, a low risk officer can supervise 400 to 450 cases. So we're sitting good, I guess, is the point in Adel where we don't really have to make adjustments. So again, being able to use data and analytics to kind of help guide our processes has been very valuable. And we're going to continue to expand on this dashboard with the drop down. So one thing I'll show you, we've also began doing it at pretrial to see what our numbers look for pretrial. And so with this, we've been able to get outcomes where we're still trying to work on outcomes with our supervision caseload. And I know Sarah and Sandra Hope have been looking at the data. Somebody, one of the analysts told me that Icon has more data than Iowa has corn, and that's true. But what you find out is, in order to have confidence in your data, you have to make sure that the data that's being extracted and being mined and being analyzed is good data. So one of the things that we found out, for example, in pretrial, we were trying to build a chart of seeing how long somebody was on supervision for pretrial. Well, as we pulled the records over, what they hoped to do was build a start date and an end date and then do an average. Well, all of a sudden there was multiple entries for different cases. And what we found was, for example, a person got signed up at the jail after they got released. That person went to Newton, so we got the start date at the jail. That person transferred to Newton. Vicki White up in Newton, who was the probation officer, she created a start date when she took that case over. And then Vicki retired and Kelly Johnson took that case over. So now we got a start date for Kelly. So trying to figure out where the start and end date to come up with that average. So now we have to be able to figure out how we can collapse those fields into one case so then we can analyze it. So that's the work that we're trying to do with our outcomes. What we're trying to get to for supervision is how many are being revoked for technical violations that are true technical violations, non-compliance with terms of release, and how many people are being revoked for new law violations. Some of those new law violations, we don't really, as a system, we are directly responsible and hopefully desisting people from committing crimes. But ultimately, once that crime's committed, our role is kind of turned over to judges and administrative law judges. We don't have discretionary opinion or decision making on all of that. So we're trying to get to the outcome. So with this screen, what I can tell you is we're doing a great job with pretrial release. We have record number of people getting released from Polk County Jail. This chart shows you how successful we are. Somewhere around 80. It depends on month. We're getting close to 80 to 90% of our people who are released successfully complete their term of pretrial release. And actually, even if you look on the numbers, it'll tell you what that, down below there, it'll show you how they were set. How do I do that, Scott?
Yeah, click on one that has more orange or red.
Up here. Here?
Yeah, click on the revoked side, the orange.
The orange? Okay, there we go. So it tells you how they're revoked and what they're revoked for. So again, it gives our staff an idea of what they should be, kind of focusing on if we want to and try to improve outcomes. And then obviously, as you can see, again, I talked about the urban rural issue. 964 cases in the last year came out of Polk County. And then there's what it looks like around other places. So even though they go into other districts, we basically still, a lot of those people will be low risk. And then the other interesting piece that I could show you, I'll spare you it because my skills here. But if you pull down the level of supervision up here at the top, level 4 is our highest. And when we look at level 4, it'll show that basically a lot of the failures, so to speak, that we have with our supervision are all connected to the level 4 cases. Our highest risk cases are the ones that are getting revoked more often, and that's what you would expect to see. So, and then this is a function that we're going to hope to put into our supervision, but this is every officer in the district that has a pretrial case. So we'll be able to look across the board and see how each officer is doing with their caseload, how many levels case level 4 they have, what their success rate looks like, blah, blah, blah. And then what we want to be able to do is with our cognitive groups, we want to be able to build a dashboard that shows us how our cognitive groups, how successful they are in creating successful outcomes. And then we also want to drill down by group facilitator to see, is, Jerry and Art's group more successful than somebody else's group? And if so, what are Jerry and Art doing that others may not be doing when they're facilitating the groups? How are they getting the outcomes that they want? So again, I just wanted to, share with everybody today that we're continuing to use analytics in our operations in an effort to try to get better at what we do. And as a director, the information that is on this screen allows me to be able to figure out how to target resources and see, how best to use staff. So.
Got a question.
Yes.
can you break down, the proportion of, on your high risk of number 5, level 5s? Can you break down how many, where those are coming from? Are they coming from parolees? Are they coming from
Yes.
probation?
Yep, so on the,
And is there some kind of a correlation between that and why those cases are on the rise, I guess is what I'm kind of wondering.
yeah, so that was kind of surprising to me. Oh, I keep flipping the wrong side here. So if I just go level 5 and I just go probation, parole, this will give you your percentage. So 80% of our level 5s are coming from probation. And it's almost, you know, pretty close to what it is for, oh, that's a Dell, that's why. I'm like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem like a high enough number. There we go. There we go. So it's, yeah, this gets kind of, this is really probation, but pretrial is this little sliver here. So the vast majority are still probation cases, the level 5. So again, you know, a lot of people are avoiding prison. I guess that's really what the takeaway needs to be from this presentation, is that, you know, Polk County and the 5th District, we're trying to divert as many people, I think, as a system from having to go to prison and giving people another chance to see if they can succeed. But if they do get released on community supervision, we're gonna give them a high level of supervision. They're not just gonna be seen once every month or once every 6 months. They're gonna be seen 4 times a month, and we're gonna try to address safety as well. But, so yes. Any other questions?
Jared, this is just state, right, not federal probation as well, right?
Yeah, the reason that federal is in our charts here is because we have a contract with the Federal Bureau of Prisons for the clients that come into Fort Des Moines. But once they complete their term at Fort Des Moines, then they're released to the federal probation system. We don't supervise them after that. But again, with the level system, a lot of the federal clients are gonna be level 4 and 5 too that we're seeing. When I started in federal probation, it was the guy that was lying about how much grain he had in his elevator was the federal charge, and now it's drugs, it's obviously bank robbery. There's more violent crimes that we're seeing in our residential facilities. You know, it was really rare back in the day to see a federal client get revoked from, and I know Michelle and Art can attest to this, from a residential facility, but the federal clients that we're getting today are much higher risk than we used to get. All righty.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the director's update.
Good morning. Stepping in for Beth today. I'm Sally Kramer. I'm the deputy over community-based corrections. Beth is at APPA. She's, as I think you know, she does their leadership program, and unfortunately it fell on this weekend. The next one's in August, and I haven't looked at the dates yet for that, but she's busy building leaders in the nation, so you're stuck with me. The first announcement that we wanted to make, and some of the things, is that Cord, as you know, is going to be our new legislative liaison. So we're excited about that. We're excited about the new session, and so we'll have a lot of information for you probably about that in February. I would expect Cord will do the same updates, or as much or as little as you guys want, so they'll probably be reaching out to you. The second announcement that we have is we have a new training director. Our past training director, Trish Signor, retired, and she's now being a grandma to her grandchild. So we are sad to see her go, but after a nationwide search, Bill and I both sat on that interview committee. The candidates were phenomenal, and we're really excited about the person that was chosen. While we were doing the interviews, we're hearing about podcasts, and we're hearing about, anyway, the whole ideas of training. It's exciting who we chose, because it's not your regular stand here and provide training. It's really great ideas. Her name's Sarah Holder. She comes from the private sector, from a company who's developed training that has to do with technology, and has got a lot of experience. So hopefully we'll get her before you I think she starts next Friday, so we'll get her in front of you and go over her ideas and the things that she wants us to do. The next thing Beth wanted me to cover is our new level system implementation. It was great to have, I won't bore you with as much because Jerry kind of showed that to you, but we started working on this about 3 years ago, and several districts already were doing supervision based on the level systems, but it wasn't done statewide. So the district directors got together, they put together contact standards that are consistent. So for the first time in Iowa, and I've been around 33 years, if you get supervision in 5th district, it's going to look the same as 2nd district as far as trying to give dosage and programming and treatment. The other thing that the district directors did was they agreed to do a time study, and based on that time study, that's how they determined what those caseloads should look like. So if you have a person that's on a level 5, the other thing that we're looking at is instead of just doing supervision, we really want to offer people dosage and treatment and programming. The analogy that's been used for several folks is, you know, in the past, in some places, we were more like referees where somebody does something wrong, you call them on it, and they may have to go sit on a bench or jail or prison or what have you. Now, instead, we're trying to train officers to be more like coaches where they will still hold the person accountable, tell them what they did wrong, but instead of slapping their hands, they're actually sitting there showing them how to hit a ball the right way, showing them how to throw, giving them the skills. So it's a mindset change that we're trying to do statewide. Our training team has done an excellent job. They worked with a group of really good officers from across the state and developed, first off, e-learnings that were scenario-based, which is nice because even ROs can do those. If they're sitting at a desk, you can get them off and do that to just explain the whole philosophy and how to supervise by risk, and more importantly, how to offer people programming. And then the second piece that we asked the training center to do, which again I'm very impressed, is to develop remote training. One of the biggest things we heard from the districts was that it's really hard to get people out of their jobs for a week, go to Des Moines, they've got to pay for motel rooms, that kind of thing. And so again, we got a statewide group of people who were willing to work with our training center to put this together, and they're doing remote training over Zoom. That's just the platform that we used. They copied kind of the college experience in that they did small bits of the training, and then they would follow up and assign them to do readings. They'd have discussion boards. But I think the nicest part is they still did a lot of skill practice. They put people into group rooms virtually over our system, pop in, help them skill practice so they learn those skills. The first round was completed. I looked at all of the comments. Only one person didn't like it. The rest of them said this was really great. It kept me with my caseload, so I didn't feel so far behind when I came back. So we're really hopeful that we can get more staff through this programming, because I think the biggest thing, one of the best comments that I saw was from a probation officer 3 who says, I've been around for 20 years and this is one of the first trainings where I felt like I left with real skills. I feel like I have alternatives, I have things that I can do differently with people instead of getting frustrated. So there was just kind of a lot of neat little snippets that we got from people that went through the program, and it was anonymous feedback, so it's not like they thought they were gonna get some, you know, kudos for saying that, but, so we're just really hopeful that more staff will, be able to get through that and keep improving that training. Jerry also talked about our risk assessment, and I'm glad he brought that up, so I won't say as much there either, but as you know, with risk assessment tools, we should validate them every 3 years, but we also need to norm them. So that's the piece that we're doing now, and by norm what we mean is, are our buckets correct? Do we have people in the right buckets? Is our risk tool putting people in the right buckets? And then as Jerry said, really looking closely at our risk assessment tool, saying if it doesn't add to predictability and it causes some racial bias, we need to get rid of that. So they've done a good job on that, and I think that we should have some data. Sarah's working diligently on it. My guess is she may want to present that to you if you guys are interested as well when that's completed. So a lot of statewide initiatives going on. The other statewide initiative that's sort of wrapping up is our response matrix. Nationally, about 3 years ago, Interstate Compact required that we have folks, before you ask for a revocation, that you show that you've gone through our response matrix. We were behind the ball, we didn't have that completed, but again, we put together a statewide group to look at what's an appropriate response and to give people some ideas about how they should appropriately respond. And so we rolled that out, I guess a year ago, and asked staff to really look at it so that before we programmed it into ICON to see if those responses are effective, that we could make some changes to it, because as you know, it's kind of expensive to program things into ICON. What we found is the staff needed training. So the rollout was a little slower than we expected. And again, I'm going back to the statewide response training that we're given. And again, the comments that we got there is, this is great, I'd like specific training on responding to violations and more practice on how to do that. There was one person that said, I don't like to role play. So in all honesty about that, which isn't surprising.
Actually, they probably all don't like
Yeah,
role-playing.
I was gonna say it.
I'm willing to admit
One
it.
of
Yeah,
just honest,
exactly.
yeah.
The last thing too on the level implementation that Jerry talked about is the last piece that we're still working on is making sure that we have the right resources in the right places, not just geographically, but also, do we have the right number of PO3s to supervise those level 4s and 5s? Do we have the right number of PO2s? And then do we have the right number of PO1s? We don't. Through attrition, they're working on getting those realigned, and then with the resources, as they free up resources, then they start more treatment programming and dosage. So that's one strategy that we've employed to boost the dosage, is getting those staff realigned. And as you can probably tell, the rural areas is the tricky part, because you know, you've got a smattering of both high-risk people and low risk. But the district directors have done a nice job continuing to move in that direction. The next thing Beth wanted me to talk about was the governor's focus group. That group worked fast and furiously in the month of December, and they do have a group of recommendations that have gone to the governor, and then we'll move forward. You should have gotten a handout, and so instead of going through each and every one of them, I thought it would be helpful just to kind of point out some highlights from that recommendation. If you just look at the very first page in there, you'll see that they're broken down in categories. And in phase 1, the first set of recommendations, one thing I want to point out that staff did a really nice job of is they were asking that we automate the voting right application upon discharge, either from prison or off supervision. Our IT team got together and they looked at filling in what it was the governor's office needed for someone to apply, and they were able to fill in all but 2 fields. So that went live. District directors have been great about it, the institution. So when someone leaves supervision, they should receive this filled out application form with all but 2 questions, and we've asked that they also help the person fill those 2 things out, because the last 2 things that we couldn't auto feed had to do with plans of payment, money. Do they still owe money? And now what has happened is, if someone's in a payment plan, even if they owe money, they're still eligible to have their voter rights reinstated. So we'll keep an eye on that and see how that's been working, but we're hoping to take that barrier away. So that was a recommendation that we actually just went ahead and took care of. The other things, you know, talking about Evelyn Davis and places like this, we're, you know, looking at competitive grants for more places like this to exist. And the piece I want to highlight too is the behavioral health treatment. If you want to look in there, we talked a lot about treatment capacity in our institutions, and that it's not where it needs to be yet. And so one of the recommendations is that we include that you know, that be considered by the legislature as something that they can fund if funds are available. And then also community-based corrections. They are doing a good job of realigning resources, but there's still a gap. So not everyone, you know, will receive the resources that they need. And again, I'll let you read through that, but are there any questions just about that? Yeah.
Is the staff looking at, like, with these recommendations, looking at those that can be implemented, you know, like prioritize and just go ahead and implement them, without waiting for, you know, someone else to respond?
Right, I think that's a great question. The voters' recommendation, for example, we just looked at each other and said, we can do this now.
Mhm.
We don't need to wait
Mhm.
for anybody to do anything. So that's a good example of, went to the directors and said, are you guys okay with us moving forward? And they said, absolutely, we can do this. Looking at treatment resources, the district directors have been proactive in that and trying to realign resources and, you know, just providing that feedback, first to the governor's office, then others, just where we're at. And Jerry showed you, it's in real time that we can look and see where we're at with the number of resources that we need and you know, where the gaps are and that kind of thing. I think the other thing that's interesting is the create a value process map of the reentry in the community. That's something that we actually have a grant for, and I'm gonna let Sandra maybe touch on that, but they've done a really nice job of looking at that reentry process while people are incarcerated. It's a whole nother ballgame, as you know, Mary, from the work that we did when I was in the 5th district, to do that in the community. There's a lot of obstacles, and it was nice, the focus group actually did the reentry simulation, and I think that that really brought it to life, what it's like to come out, be in the community, have no money for transportation, and trying to find a job and keeping your appointments and those kind of things. So that's another nice recommendation. It has to do with transportation and having people reinstated. So yeah, absolutely. You know, like I said, the district directors are working on realigning resources right now proactively. So it hopefully we'll get some support from that, but we'll keep working regardless of what happens.
Thank you.
Sally, are they gonna continue to meet?
Yeah, so that's the second part. Phase 2 is actually going to start, and I don't have the dates for those. I don't know that those been set, but the next part is going to be looking specifically at racial disparities. So that's good. We have a lot of data. We need to look at it, and that group's going to examine those issues. So, okay. The next thing that we're gonna talk about are the reentry roundtables that have been hosted by the governor. We've had 2, they've been fantastic, thanks to those that have attended. The first one was at ICIW on November 6th. We then had one at Rockwell City on December 12th. And the next one is in Anamosa at 8 a.m. on the 29th of January. So if you can attend, I think those have been very powerful events. I'm gonna give you the CDC lens. I think one of the best things about that is we've invited district directors to attend those and for them to meet and talk with those employers firsthand about the barriers and the things that happen when people come out into the community and they need to find employment, and especially if they're not from that area. So I think as much as anything, walking around on those tours, having our community-based corrections folks speak with those employers that are reaching into the institution has, as much as anything, been a very positive slant. So you're getting the CDC lens today, so I hope that's okay. But obviously, the institutions have been really doing some nice work, as you know, with reentry and job skills and that kind of thing. So it's been a nice marriage of putting it all together. So again, if you can come to Anamosa the 29th, we will be targeting other institutions, and we'll get you those dates as they come out.
How long does that normally last?
8 to noon,
8 to
maybe a little, oh, go ahead.
This one was, they've adjusted the schedule. This one starts at 12:30.
Oh,
There's
good.
been a kind of a
Okay.
late
Oh, this one's
Thanks
gonna
for-
start at 12:30 and go
Yeah.
till 5 or something like that?
They must have heard all of us who get up at 4 in the morning to be there by 7:30 that we'd really appreciate a different time frame, but no, thanks, Bill, hadn't heard that yet.
Okay,
Yeah, so
thank
about
you.
three hours or so, I would.
Okay.
And then there's a tour that's, you wouldn't have to do, so it'll be a little bit shorter, because all of you've been there several times, but. Okay. The next thing Beth asked me to speak with you about is the Council of State Governments and the National Governors Association are involved in looking at state systems, policies, and data, and they're putting together some recommendations for the governor, which is much like the focus group, but it's just researchers who have a national view and lens of things that are working to reduce recidivism, reduce victimization. And, they met with the district directors, some of their staff, they interviewed, IWD, just other partners, and they're coming up with some recommendations. That is not public yet, they're still gonna check in one more time with our CBC directors, share, some of their ideas, and then that recommendation will go to the governor's office. Again, some of the recommendations have, most of them for us have to do with behavioral health and programming and ways to do things differently. They're gonna touch on revocations, how to deal with those. But they really, again, they have a nationwide view on who's doing innovative things, what things seem to be working, and so once that report becomes final, we'll report that to you as well. But that's going on too. This has been one of the busiest Novembers and Decembers that I can remember in a long time, but it's really exciting. It's been fun to have a governor who is interested in what we do and promoting the things that we're working on. So it's been really kind of a fun time. I did a lot of Amazon shopping because I didn't have time to go shopping, but it's been great. The last thing, and I can divert the questions to Bill, but we had a fire in Newton in our laundry area, and Steve Dick isn't here because he's meeting with DAS already to try to get through those things to figure out the repairs and all of those kind of things. But everybody's safe, staff responded quickly, they have a great relationship with the Newton Fire Department, and so just trying to get operations back to normal as we figure out what the costs are, what it's gonna cost to repair, and that's the extent of what I know about that. So if you have specific questions, I may have to defer you to Bill, who was out there after it happened.
What was the cause? Did you say the cause?
Fire marshal was there yesterday, so.
So it's still under
Yeah,
investigation.
they're working through that.
What's the impact on the whole facility? Did that serve the whole facility, or do you have an alternate facility?
We were very fortunate, I guess, if you can say a fire, there's something fortunate about the fire that it was at that site. So we have laundry services, I can't talk this morning, at the medium site. And so they may be running that 24 hours a day.
Okay.
But, and they got a cube van from Mitchellville. They had a cube van they could loan them to, so they're trucking the laundry up the hill, and they'll do that laundry in the middle of the night and get it down by like 5 o'clock the next morning. And they've also, I did a walkthrough yesterday, I met with their management team. They've got a alternative site where they believe they can set up laundry services fairly quickly and relocate. So they're hoping that within a month, maybe they have at least one washer and dryer working at the minimum site. So all in all, great response by the staff, great response from the community, and could have been a whole lot worse. There was a dorm right above that laundry, and the fire never got up there. It was all contained within the firewalls in that room.
Okay, great.
Since we met last, I think we had a couple of assaults on staff, maybe at Anamosa and Clarinda. I was wondering how the staff are doing.
Fort Dodge was the other one.
Fort Dodge, okay.
The Anamosa staff went right back to work, was treated out, hospital, insisted on going back to work and was cleared. The one at Fort Dodge was kind of the opposite. Didn't go out to the hospital initially, then went out later on, had some concerns, and so had to work through a few more things. But they're both doing okay, and very isolated incidents, and so hopefully, that is not a trend.
part of
Those
the
things
job.
do happen, unfortunately, once in a while, and we take a look at every facet of that, what caused it, what we could have done different if there was anything, and sometimes they're not. They're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. So, bad situations, but they're both doing okay, so,
That's good to know.
yeah, thank you for asking.
Well, that's always been a big concern of mine and the board, that we have a dangerous job, and we think about the staff all the time.
Very much appreciated, so.
That's enough.
Any other? I think just the one last thing is that, Jerry did a nice job of showing you the data. It's been nice because we have a few programmers out in the community who are starting to pull data rather than sending, not that we don't mind, it's just a resource thing. So really we can look at that real-time data and, you know, the trends are different depending on what part of the state you're in. You're gonna see somewhat different things in the 1st district than the 5th district. So we're trying to do some, global type work on that kind of thing. Like, for example, one of the things that we're looking at is direct commitments to prison. Is it different if you're in Waterloo versus Union County versus Winnebago County? And it is. So we're just starting to look at those kinds of things, which means, and it was one, you know, I think it might have been I don't know if it's a recommendation or not, but, you know, continue to work with the judges on training with them about how to best use our resources and why we make the decisions that we do, so that justice looks the same for folks. So that was just the last piece. It's been very nice, though, to get that data in the hands of people versus them waiting for us and being able to pull that. I think that's been really helpful for them. I shouldn't speak for them, but it's been really nice to see. All right.
Thank you, Sally.
Okay.
Next on the agenda is education with Sandra Smith.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for the invite, and I am very excited about what is happening in correctional education, and there is a lot going on. First of all, our very basics that we offer in all of our correctional facilities, which are the HISET, which is the high school equivalency, our literacy program, our life skills program, our vocational programming, career training. And so over the years, our programs have increased and have been extended to many of our facilities, whereas at one point you had some facilities that had certain programs and other facilities did not. Specifically, our life skills program has grown tremendously, whereas at one point we had 2 or 3, 4 at the max of vocational programming, life skills programming being offered. Now, out of the 6 facilities, out of the 9 facilities, there are 6 facilities where we have full-time life skills programming that is being offered. We've also made some adjustments in our life skills program at the women's facility, because in looking at the needs of women being very different from the needs of men, adjusting the program so that it was more gender focused for women. And so that's been exciting and progressive as well. As you know, we went from being a GED state to being a HISET state, and so we are in our 5th year, and we knew that over time in changing to HISET, that the rigor would increase. And so that's what we are currently experiencing right now, is that the rigor in the HISET has increased over the years. And so providing some additional training that is offered through the Department of Ed, which we work very closely with, for our staff, as well as the community colleges, and providing staff development for our instructors. Across the state, we have a total of about 39 instructors, and the 5 community colleges provide the staff for our instructors. And basically, we have at this point in time filled the majority of our teaching positions across the state. We have just recently 2 positions that are vacant. Those 2 positions exist at Anamosa, and they are HISET/literacy instructors. And Kirkwood Community College is working very diligently in getting the posting out and conducting interviews to identify the right candidates for those 2 positions. And so I think that that is a plus, whereas in the previous years, we've had quite a few openings in correctional education, and it's been a struggle to fill those positions, and at this point, we feel we have the right match for those positions across the state. And so, kudos for our community college partners in getting those positions filled, and hopefully, we will be able to fill the 2 positions at our, at the Anamosa facility. Some other interesting things that are going on at our facilities is our college credit programs. And we are able to do that through, one, the Pell Grant. And Iowa Central is providing an opportunity for our other facilities that have the technology capability to be able to participate in taking some college classes. At this point where we are, so that all facilities will at one point have those same opportunities, is looking at the DOC's infrastructure at our facilities. And in order to really take a close look at the infrastructure for all of our facilities across the state, because they're not all at the same point. Some of our facilities are older than others, therefore the infrastructure, we run into major issues there. So we applied for, along with the community colleges and the Department of Ed, for the Ascendium grant. And we were awarded the planning stage of the grant, which is $150,000. And that's looking at the DOC's infrastructure. And we're going to have a group come in and evaluate our infrastructure and give us some idea of what we need to do, what are the pluses, what do we need to improve upon, or what doesn't exist that needs to exist. So that's the Ascendium group grant. The second grant is called the Lumina Foundation. And the Lumina Foundation is a grant of $100,000, and that looks at policies, practices that exist, or any legislation that needs to be in place. And so we are working with higher ed in reviewing DOC's, our policies and practices. And basically for post-secondary, we really don't have very much, because our state appropriation dollars is very specific about where it's earmarked to, and that's providing educational opportunities for those that do not have a high school diploma or a high set. And so that becomes the first priority for that spending. And so we will be investigating what other opportunities are out there for post-secondary in our facilities. And one of the areas that will address that is that Iowa Central 2 years ago was identified or selected for the Pell Grant pilot. Since then, the pilot has reopened. And so we strongly encouraged and supported our other 4 community colleges to apply for the Pell Grant, which they have done. DOC provided letters of support and any assistance that we could provide for them. All 4 at this point were selected to participate in the second round of the process of the application for the Pell Grant. And so that was completed before they went on Christmas break. And we're hoping to hear sometime in the spring as to which of the other 4 community college partners will be selected. And so we're hoping that all 4 will, but it will open additional doors for post-secondary. And so the question becomes, okay, what are we currently doing in correctional education in regards to post-secondary? And as I stated, Iowa Central has a Pell Grant that has opened up an opportunity for the women at ICIW, the Newton Correctional Facility, and IMCC. And so we're piloting what that looks like in those facilities. And looking at the technology, what's available, the infrastructure capacity, and so forth. And so, as I said, there are lots of things that are going on, and we're all thrilled that it's happening. We've been provided the third grant, and the third grant in education is looking at adult reentry and employment. And Sally kind of talked a little bit about the opportunity for employment and training. Well, this grant provides just that. We're in partnership with Iowa Workforce Development, and we did, out of this planning grant, we went to all 9 facilities to take a look at what does reentry look like at your facility, and what things are working, what things are not working, and what else is needed. And we're going to be doing the same thing out of this grant with the CBCs. And so we will be reaching out to the directors at the CBC and doing a map that talks about this is what currently exists, this is what's working, and this is what's needed. And from this, then we will submit to the Department of Justice our plan, and we have a grant manager, Kevin Robbins, and once that plan is completed and submitted, we hope to know whether or not our plan has been selected to be part of the $3 million that would be available to implement what's in our map. And so we're excited to hear about that. So we should know something March or April about the second phase of that grant. So those are the 3 grants that we're working on. We're looking at sharing research. How do we go about sharing research? Because some of the educational data that's being requested, ICON, we collect the data, but this is more specific, so we're in partnership with developing an MOU with the Department of Ed, because a lot of that data comes from the community college. So instead of reinventing the wheel, we decided that it would be really a lot more to our advantage to look at what exists and utilize what we already have. And so we're going to do quite a bit of data sharing with the Department of Ed. And so I don't have a whole lot more to add besides the fact that I've been out on medical leave, and so I'm playing catch up. I know one other thing I wanted to mention is our partnership with the Vera Institute, and looking at this is what education looks like in our Iowa prisons. And so we're working on a spreadsheet that really shows the lay of the land per facility, and programming, post-secondary, life skills, completions in literacy, completions in HISET, so that at a glance, you can look at that spreadsheet and know exactly what's going on in Iowa in corrections in education. And so we've collected the data, we're inputting the data, and I will be forwarding that on to the Vera Institute.
Is that something you can share with us?
As soon as yes,
Okay.
I will be more than happy to share that with you.
And I'd love to
Yeah.
hear the updates on your grants and all your findings with all the
Okay.
information.
I will be happy to share that.
Interesting work.
Yeah.
Sandra, can you share with me and help me, because my brain's not working?
Mhm.
Where are the locations of the other 4 community colleges? I'm trying to
The other 4
pinpoint my
community
map.
colleges, we've got Iowa Central,
Mhm.
who currently has the Pell Grant. We've got Kirkwood.
Mhm.
We have Iowa Western Community College. We have Southeastern Community College. So those are the other 4. And then, of course, we have DMAC. So that
Iowa
makes up
West.
the 5.
I was missing the West.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm. Any other questions?
Yeah, Sandra, welcome back, by the way. I'm
Oh,
glad-
thank you.
Glad you're, you know, obviously this is, I'm looking at the recommendations that are being made to the governor and education and reentry to the workforce are
Right at the top.
right, a big part of it, so
Yeah.
I'm glad you're involved and you're doing the work you're doing. It's exciting to see that happening, because
It is.
that's the direction we need to be heading, obviously.
Yes, I would agree. Any other questions?
Thank you, Sandra. Next, we're gonna have the deputy director speak on juvenile lifers.
Okay. Again, I'm Bill Spursai, Sally's counterpart on the institution side of the table of organization. At our last meeting, I think it was, the question was raised about juvenile lifers and if we had any data as far as results on those. So we did a data poll, and I don't have handouts for you today, but I believe it'll be memorialized in the minutes here. But so Senate File 448 came about in April of 2015 and was a very significant piece of legislation that it opened the door possibility for parole for work release for individuals who were sentenced as Class A felonies, life sentences, but they were juveniles at the time of their offense. So what we have found is we had 52 offenders who were part of that group that was impacted by Senate File 448. 36 of those are still incarcerated at various levels. We have one who passed away before being granted release. We have 3 who are deceased who were on parole at the time they passed, but currently we have 3 on work release and 9 on parole. So 16 that we have released in total, and to date our recidivism rate is 0. We have not had one of those individuals come back. So, very small sample, I understand, but you know, right now it's looking very, very good, and I certainly hope that continues. Any questions or anything? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Well, let me see, before we start the public comment section, I recognize that we've got a Iowa senator with us. Claire, and I understand you're very supportive of the mental health issue. Would you like to, before we start, would you like to introduce yourself and maybe say a few words?
Thank you, and I didn't expect to speak, so I'll just keep my remarks very brief. Claire Celsi, I represent the southwestern corner of Polk County here, and then a couple things I'm interested in is the education part. I think that's extremely important. I'm also following the focus group results as they roll forward, and yes, mental health and substance abuse treatment too. So I'm happy to hear those issues addressed today. I think I picked a good meeting to come to get a good update on all of those. I want to thank you all for your service. I served on 2 boards before I was elected for 10 years straight, so I know the time commitment that you all put in for that, and thank you for that, and just thanks for letting me say hi.
Well, thank you, Claire, for coming.
Yeah, you
See if you
bet.
get some of your cohorts to come once in a while for you, we appreciate that. But mental health is, I mean, I personally have recognized that as a huge problem, and in fact, I even went and, I knew a scientist that was involved with the AIDS research. Got a hold of him and said, can we do anything about this mental illness? The big problem there is they don't have any human brains that you can test, so that's,
It's a very complicated problem, and the legislature needs to do a better job of appropriating more money toward the Department of Corrections, so that's one of the things that I'll be carrying back to my colleagues about what it would be spent on and how important it is.
but the reason, my point was the research for mental health is so difficult because you can't really study it. I was hoping you could come up with a pill with that, maybe you could, I call it the young man's
Just don't do
disease,
any
and that's what we deal with a lot
unauthorized
is.
studies. That's my recommendation.
So many of these kids, all of a sudden from 18, 19, 21, 23, this disease hits. My thinking was, boy, it'd be nice to have a pill for that, but it's a very, very difficult problem, and most of the kids that we deal with that are getting in trouble suffer from that. And again, we could talk about hours with that, so I appreciate your work in the mental health field. Getting back to the next thing is the public comments, and this is anybody here from the public that would like to address the board and say anything. Now's your opportunity. I just ask if you'd stand up and speak loudly so we can hear. I would appreciate it.
Me again. Hi. I did have a question about the caseloads regarding the data that was presented earlier. Jerry, I believe you said something about your, ideal caseload was 25 per person. What are the actual caseloads right now?
Yeah, it gets a little bit difficult, sometimes in our rural areas where we don't have the flexibility to divert resources to them. So, in Polk County, we're able to, maintain a standardized 1 to 25, for example, if they were only level 5 cases. But we get into places like Creston, Osceola, other places, and the probation officer in those areas won't exclusively carry level 5, they'll have all the levels. And sometimes those numbers can get a little bit inflated, and then we try to divert some of our resources from Polk County to help out that level. But I think it speaks more to what Sally presented on. I think we're sitting good in terms of probation officers being able to, quote, monitor cases, but where we see the need is more community treatment coordinator positions to be able to provide group facilitation to those clients. And so that's what I think our ask is gonna be this year to the governor's office, is to have more capacity to be able to put some attention and resources towards teaching those cognitive groups.
How many people are you requesting?
Sally?
At this point, we just said if resources are available, we will work with the governor's office on that.
Assuming that they are not available, how many FTEs do you think you would be asking for ideally if you could have them funded?
So that's a more complicated question than it seems like, because the problem is that we have what are called, we have too many PO2s, and we need to, so we're not realigned the way that we need to be. So we need to divert a lot of those PO2s down to PO1s, which would then that would free up resources for us to do programming. Well, we're not gonna lay people off, and we're not gonna demote staff, so we're trying to do it through attrition and through realigning. So that's where figuring out what the real need is tough. Maybe Cord remembers we had the board sign a letter asking for if resources are available, if we put it, I don't know if we put a number in, I think we just said if resources are
So
available.
ballpark figure, are we talking 5, are we talking 15, are we talking 20?
In the 20,
Okay, I just wanted to get a general idea of what
Yeah.
the shortage was.
yeah.
Thank you.
And I would add, Senator Celsi, we were fortunate enough to have 2 of those community treatment coordinator positions added to our TO last fiscal year. And obviously, as a Polk County resident, the difficulty sometimes isn't just in getting positions, it's in filling positions due to the labor market being so tight. You know, we try to promote a lot of our staff that are at our residential facilities as ROs, and not just as a favor, but in my humble opinion, Art, I know would agree, working at a residential facility, it's a front door to our agency, but it's also the best training ground a person can receive to work in this field. So we try to, when we have openings that occur in the department, a lot of times those positions are filled by our RO staff, and backfilling a lot of those RO staffs that are the 4 to midnight with Tuesday, Wednesday off, or midnight to 8 with Wednesday, Thursday, trying to get, enough qualified applicants has been a lot of work. So even though the positions were afforded to us, we continue to try to still fill a lot of these positions so we can get to the capacity. But with that said, we're doing a good job right now with, what we're able to do, and, if we could get a few more positions, obviously we could do better.
Thank you for adding that nuance, that really helps me understand the problem.
You bet.
I'll echo that, Jerry, because I work on the adolescent side in terms of residential treatment, and it is tough work. And you gotta find the people that have the heart to serve, not just the willingness to serve. And to fill those bodies is a complicated issue in terms of, also, if we start talking on the behavioral side, what does that look like? You gotta have the right person in the right seat to fill that position if you're gonna do any type of group care.
Exactly.
So,
How are we doing with our nurse shortage? We're talking about hiring.
It's getting better, I mean, it's still, and it's the same issue that we've had, that Jerry kind of speaks to as well, but, Dr. Greenfield has done a phenomenal job reaching out and finding
Is that
individuals.
ADC?
Yeah, primarily the challenges remains at IMCC, where you're in competition with the university and other entities in that area. There's some things that have happened over the last few years, and we just have a hard time right now competing.
Well, I tried to recruit one over Christmas and she just rolled her eyes, so. It is tough, but it's very, very important.
But in a number of other sites where it's a little less competitive, we're doing well. But that's obviously by far our largest operation is the medical classification center, and it's also such a competitive area. We are struggling. I spent New Year's Eve there trying to work out schedules and look at alternatives to kind of move the resources we have around to get the best coverage. And so we are constantly looking at doing the best job with what we have.
Anyone else from the public? I see someone. Hi.
Hi, I'm Christy Lockhart, and I was sentenced to juvenile life without parole when I was 17. And I am one of the 9 that you have worked hard to release, and I'm very successful. I represent the Iowa Coalition for Juvenile Justice, and I'd like to invite anyone who's interested to attend our meeting. I have a question for Bill. What are you doing for the, are you collecting data for the Board of Parole reviews for the lifers that are still incarcerated? Do you have any data on that? How often are they seen?
I don't at this time, and we can do some more digging. And I don't know just, of those 36, I don't know where all they're at in the system. I know there's several that are up at Rockwell that are working on that transition, as you're probably familiar with. I think, part of what we do is we get them to minimum sites and then take them to the community. And because some of our incarcerated individuals have been locked up a long time, and things like going and using a debit card, they've never done that before. So we get them a debit card, and the counselor takes them into the community and they buy some groceries, or they go to Casey's and they buy something, or buy gas, learn how to run the gas pump. And so it's a very, very long step down process, but we have a number of those because I'm aware anecdotally, because anytime somebody goes into that program, I get notified, hey, we're gonna be going into the community and doing these things. So I can do a little more digging as to where we're at, but that, again, I wish I would have known who you were, sir. It's great to see you in this setting. I'm so excited about that.
Thank you for
Thank
all
you.
your work. I know it took many, many years, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and very grateful, and had no problems whatsoever. So, I thank you for that.
You were at the meeting in November, weren't you?
Pardon me?
Weren't you at the meeting in November?
No, this is my first DOC
Okay.
meeting, yeah.
but there was someone there.
Yeah.
And then I had one more question. Could
Sure.
you say what diagnosis means when you're a nurse? Yes? No? Oh, what do you refer to when you say diagnosis?
I don't know that
I think dosage maybe.
Dosage,
Oh,
your dosage.
So that's a good question. So dosage is defined as a specific intervention to help someone with the skill deficits that they have. So cognitive programming, individual assignments. Our officers are trained in what are called core correctional practices. So we're really trying to move people away from, if someone says that they're struggling and they drank last night, getting to the why and what is it that they need help with, instead of just we're gonna consequence you. So that's what we mean by dosage, is those specific interventions that they've been taught to be better listeners, to build better rapport, all of that. So we have like a comprehensive list, but that's just kind of the overstream. And then of course dosage is also if they're in a private provider setting, getting substance use treatment, mental health treatment.
Thank you for your comments, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Did you?
Happy New Year. My name's Carla Dawson. I am currently the president of Iowa Cure. I have a couple questions. One was the one about dosage, but another one is the prices of commissary items are always on the rise, but the prices that incarcerated individuals are paid is not on the rise. So if you have somebody who's in prison and they're working and the prices of the stuff is going up, but their paycheck is not, it's kind of hard to make it when you're incarcerated, especially if you don't have anybody on the outside. So that's a concern. The second one is, that you brought up, is about the fulfilling of open places at different institutions. For 3 years, they did not have a dentist at Anamosa. It's filled now, thank you, Dr. Greenfield. But in that 3 years, if you had a cavity or something, they's like, we'll pull it. Well, you can fill a tooth, but if you don't have a dentist, then you can't fill a tooth. So for 3 years, there were a lot of teeth pulling going on in Anamosa. So it's good that there's now a dentist, but small things like that, you know, it doesn't seem like it's big to us, but when you're incarcerated, it's a big deal. So anything that the board can do about these issues would be oh so grateful for people. Speaking for my son, who's personally incarcerated at Anamosa, would be highly gratefully appreciated. Thank you.
Bill, who's the dentist in Anamosa?
There is Dr. Hill will be starting in January. I don't want to get into a debate, but I think we went about a year without a dentist. Dr. Randall Toothaker was our dentist for a number of years, and he left. And so in the meantime, we have had a couple folks from the community that come in on a regular basis. We've also worked with kind of a temp agency that got us coverage. So at my level, as former warden there, and now as deputy director, I mean, I am not getting complaints. That doesn't mean they don't exist, but I think Dr. Greenfield, and before him Dr. Deal, did an excellent job recruiting and getting those people in place. So I understand not everybody's gonna be happy, but I also know that I have worked when you didn't have good dental care, and believe me, this process we have where our incarcerated individuals can send you, as in the warden's office, an email with a problem, you know right away, and I totally get that. If your tooth hurts, you're miserable, but I just, like with Dr. Toothaker, and in that period, I just did not get any complaints. We have pretty darn good dental care, so.
Well, you know, it's something we don't really think about, and at the federal level, you know, we used to take the prisoners to a facility that, by God, I would never go to, but that was, the only remedy was pull a tooth. Kinda like being in the Army in the old days, that's what happened, so I'm glad that we're updating, but that's something we need to, I'm glad you brought that to our attention, because I'm gonna keep thinking about staying on top, like the nurse situation, let's stay on top of this dentist thing. And make sure that we can increase our dental service. I mean, I didn't even think about that, but I'm glad you brought it to our attention.
Then, is that tooth pulling still happening anywhere else other than Anamosa?
I'm not aware that it's happening at Anamosa, quite frankly. I mean, there are extractions done, but not.
But you know, when
we do fillings on a regular basis, the only thing that corrections as a whole has not been in the practice of doing is crowns and what's considered more cosmetic work. But the other thing I know that with Dr. Toothaker that happened is that we had a backlog on dentures, and during that time period, that was all brought up current, so if folks had teeth pulled, they were allowed to get dentures, and we've been taking care of that.
And we're not getting any grievances, so
Yeah, Robin would,
that's a good
Robin
sign.
would know, cause she handles grievances for us, so.
Well, we can say as a board, whenever we tour a prison, like for instance in Coralville, I think they've got a pretty outstanding dental, I mean, we've seen that where the dentists are there and the different rooms, and it's just like what you're afforded if you weren't in prison. So it's a pretty outstanding facility there that maybe the public doesn't really fully understand, or we don't think about it, but you do have, in some of the prisons that we've physically observed, that the dental programs are pretty good.
So, I see Dr. Greenfield weekly, so, I will just double check with him to make sure that he's comfortable with what's going on in the dental world. I'm sure he is. He's a very caring person, and he takes this stuff very seriously.
Well, he's one of the best, I think, but it's like everything else, we were talking about providing education, the same education opportunities at every facility. And it takes a while, and it's something we have to think about and work on. Same thing with the dental and the nursing situation, and it's just something that we've recognized and we're dealing with. Lack of resources or lack of the qualified personnel is, the big hurdles. But again, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Really appreciate that. Anything else? Anyone else want to say anything? Good. Okay, next is the open discussion with the board members. Now, we haven't met since November, so I'm sure Larry, you have plenty to say.
Well, actually, I do have a few things. Cora, you're gonna give my direct comment. First off, I wanna comment on the correction clips, especially this week's. I thought this week's just had a lot of interesting material in it. Not that they all don't, but this one, the article on Beth was very informative, and then there was an article on the college programs for prisoners, which lends itself right into what Sandra was saying, so I thought a lot of that was very good. The one question I had was, is the Region 12 article, is that involving the houses that are being built at Newton? Are they gonna be transferred over to Jefferson? Is that the first time this is gonna happen, or are there other sites in Iowa, if you're aware that that's happening?
That's one of the approved sites.
That's one of the approved sites?
Yep.
Okay, because I know a year ago or whenever it was, they were part of the group that came to visit with us about getting that off, and so, okay. And I guess the other question, do we know where we're at as far as the governor's recommendations, as far as the budget goes? Have we heard anything on that?
No, we're still working with the governor's office.
When does the legislature start?
January 13th.
Okay. Okay.
It's very soon.
Did we make any recommendations this year as far as legislative suggestions? I know I think we made one last year. Did we do any of that this year?
I'll have to double check to confirm for sure. But,
I don't recall.
On the letter of support from the board, I don't want to say yes without double checking.
Okay, because I recall the ones where as far as funding goes, but I don't remember beyond that. So. Okay. Pretty straightforward.
Congratulations on your appointment.
Yes.
Now, will you still continue with the newsletter too? Or the,
Yeah, just an added duty to my position.
You spent quite a bit of time up there last year too, as I recall. At least I saw you quite a bit when I hit town.
Yeah, I would be kind of a backup, since we are a big
It's
department.
not like it's foreign territory for you or anything like that, thankfully. So.
Anyone else have anything to say? Mary?
No?
To piggyback on your clips, the article in there, I don't know if it was this week or the week before on the phones. And I don't know who can do this, Sally or whoever, but can we get kind of just to see where we're at in terms of, kind of piggybacks on your comment, ma'am, on the commissary piece, but what are our phone costs for the can you get some information so we can kind of look at that the next time? Because I know we talked about it a couple months ago, that there was some disparities on that. And if we can kind of peek under the tent on that and see if we're in line. So, thank you.
Before we adjourn, anything else? Is there gonna be a tour of the facility after the meeting?
Yes, they would be available to do tours.
Thank you very much. Anyone else have anything to say? Okay, I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
I second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you, everyone, for coming, and I hope to get to see you guys, everyone, next month. Thank you. And that's February 6th at the main office.
Is that the legislative breakfast?
Oh, yeah, that's the breakfast, well,
So that starts at 7:30.
Yeah, you're right, Larry.
legislative forum.